Hi and welcome everyone. I don't know what happened, why the delay. I tried getting on like normal and something was stymieing me every step of the way, but I'm here now. Thanks for being patient. This is going to be an interesting show, so I'm glad you could join me. I'll just mark it with a little cover page. It's called Turpal to Pegasus, Fire in the Caucasians, and it's Saturday, July 18th, 2026. And it's supposed to go on at goodness, we were supposed to do this at 10. It's already 10:18. So anyway, here's the cover sheet to mark what we're going to be talking about. And we're also going to off-road it a bit. So right before I was, as I was preparing everything, I got a whole information dump just streaming in the morning. And it's going to kind of change the nature of the discussion a little bit. So this might be a part one, part two situation where I just like introduce some, groundwork or foundation stuff of where we're going to be headed. And then, I might have to, do a better job of presenting what I wanted to today as a part two, maybe in the following weekend. And I'll explain why. So the title itself, Turpal to Pegasus, Fire in the Caucasians, does have a lot to do with mythology, not only Greek mythology, but mythology in the Caucasus Mountains. And I'm going to show a map of where those are. And the region of the Caucasus Mountains happened between the Caspian Sea and the Black Sea. And again, we'll get into maps and all kinds of things. And there's a lot of there. So the origin of the whole kind of discussion of this was a very kind viewer out there, Rita, suggested on the last live, hey, maybe Pegasus is the next topic that comes through, or winged horses. And that got me thinking, one, about the Pegasus, and two, I was already starting to think of why in the USA, I'm United States based, do on government forms, especially like census forms and other more official quote unquote government documents, there's usually a box that they've asked historically. I mean, ever since I was little, this bothered me even in first grade, excuse me, in school, we were asked to check off our race. And so instead of saying white, it would say Caucasian. And I always wondered, why does it say Caucasian? Excuse me. There's something in the air. Because nobody ever explained what Caucasian meant and why it just didn't say white or something more simple. And so that question, along with this idea of Pegasus, was coming through from last week. And so I just did a simple search on the internet and said, hey, is there any connection between Pegasus and the Caucasus Mountains? So sure enough, yes, there is. So as I was looking, I'm just going to more broadly and generally kind of set this up, and then I'll get into detail. But generally speaking, that connection led to Prometheus, the story of Prometheus, the Greek story. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but the very basics of it is there was a Titan named Prometheus who wanted to give fire to humanity. So as a gift, so they wouldn't be in hardship. So they're not just foraging, they could cook food and have warmth and all of that. So Prometheus goes to steal fire from the quote unquote gods at the time, the Olympian gods, steals fire and gives it to humanity. So Olympian gods, meaning Zeus. Remember, if you know anything from my previous lives, we talk about how the Olympians rose up. They were the children of, it's a long story, but you have your primordial gods, and then you have the Titans, and then you have the sons and daughters of those are the Olympian gods. And the Olympian gods rose up to overthrow their forefathers, basically, the Titans and some of the primordial gods. So they stood up and battled them and supposedly are the victors. And I think they even live to this day. I think, they have a very long lifespan, and that's a whole other story I touch on in other lives. But anyway, the point of this is that the fire was stolen. And so Zeus, who was the head of the Mount Olympus or Olympian god gang, sought to punish Prometheus. He chains Prometheus, or has him chained to the Caucasus Mountains, and a specific mount called Mount Kazbek. So he has him chained, Prometheus, with a ring and and chains. I think it was gold chains. And so that's important because we have symbolism, heavy symbolism there. And the symbolism there is, here he is, he's chained to the Caucasus Mountains. So what I'm saying is the really short version of all this show is going to be that the Caucasians are referring to white people coming out of that area of the Caucasus Mountains. Where it gets really interesting is the punishment is that Prometheus is there against the rock, and I have images and things to show, like in classical paintings. But the punishment is that a great eagle comes, emphasis on eagle, I'll explain why later. Eagle swoops in every day, takes his liver, like basically it's kind of brutal, rips out his liver and consumes it every single day. And so every day Prometheus's liver regenerates and the eagle comes back, and it's over and over again. Side note, when I was growing up, I could swear, I think we have a Mandela effect going on. I could swear that it was the eagle taking his heart, because I remember being probably in, again, I was probably like 10 or something when I first heard the story, of horrified how an eagle would come and take his heart every day. And I think I even remember seeing it in classical paintings in museums. And now everywhere I look, it says the liver. So I'm not sure if I'm having the Mandela effect. And if any of you happen to know about that, do let me know. From what I can see, it's everything, all eyes pointing to the liver is taken by the eagle every day. I thought it was the heart. But anyway, it kind of does make sense it would be the liver, because supposedly scientifically the liver can regenerate, the parts of it can. Anyhow, that's a side issue. But the point is, an eagle is sent to punish Prometheus every day for having stolen the fire to give to humanity. Now, as a side note, again, why in the government system in the USA do they have white people check off a Caucasian box? Well, I think we've got a thread here, because when you look at the oppressors or the banking systems or the robber barons and all of these industrialists and everything who, comes to mind the Rockefeller, right, who started thinking it would be a great idea to put people in schools, put kids in schools, vaccinate them, keep them docile, that whole thing. Well, that's about oppressing and enslaving humanity. Well, that's what was happening with Prometheus. He was being, enslaved by chain to a rock, in the Caucasus Mountains at Mount Kazbek. The reason why I'm bringing this up is come over to America, and you could say that the people are enslaved. In the Rockefeller Plaza, there's the ice skating rink. If any of you know that famous plaza, they flooded, and at Christmas time, there's ice skating. There's a gold statue, and I have images of this to show later. But that statue, there's a man kind of strewn like this, and he's got like a flowing bit of fabric or whatever in a ring. Well, that is Prometheus. He's holding fire, but there's a huge ring and a rock showing that he is chained, and that's sitting at the foot of the Rockefeller Plaza building. So to me, that's symbolizing the oppression of humanity, still chained to the rock there. And in this way, they're enslaved, or enslaved, so to speak, but in the sense of corporate and banking and enslaving with time and money systems. So for me, the checking of the Caucasian on the box is a kind of like a sick humor for secret societies to say, you white people over here in the USA, you're still chained to this rock in Caucasus. And the eagle, what? The eagle is the symbol for the United States of America. There was discussion that the turkey should be the symbol, and then it became the eagle. So there you have the Prometheus story. You have the eagle perpetually coming in and tormenting the enslaved person chained to the rock. And in a way, that's what's happening now if you feel that you're caught up under punitive system and being penalized, right? So anyway, to me, it kind of makes sense. So Caucasian, for me, that kind of closes out that mystery, that we're still kind of being punished by the Olympian gods in a way, and through these punitive systems with time and money. And I just found that to be an interesting connection. But I did put in the live chat, I put, hey friends, turns out there's going to be a giant truth reveal in this show. And so that started to come through this morning. And so I'm going to, just kind of sum up what I just talked about now. I'll show you some pictures, but then I want to give a big truth drop about, it's going to take us to giants in Tartaria. So again, I didn't plan that on the show, but that's where we're going to be headed in a second. So what I want to do is just to set this up a little bit more. And again, this is probably going to be part 2 for next week on the title of the show, getting more into the mythology. I did mention, okay, the Greeks have Prometheus and that whole story I just told you. There's a very similar story that in the Caucasus Mountains, there's many different cultures, and they have a similar story, origin story of this, taking of the fire and giving it to people. But their hero in the story is not Prometheus, but it's, if I say this, trying to say it correctly, but it looks like Pekaharmat or something like that. And that one is a demigod who can change into be looking like a normal human, but is a demigod, and kind of as a role as a blacksmith who goes and takes the fire. Now he has help, so he doesn't have Pegasus, that's in the Greek mythology, but he has Turpal, a winged horse, who helps him go steal the fire, who also tries to protect him, but fails. And then what happens to Pekaharmat? He ends up getting what? Just like Prometheus, chained to Mount Kazbek, a specific mount in the Caucasus Mountain region. And he's there, and he also gets tormented by the eagle and the pain and all of that. In both stories, Heracles comes to save the day and frees them. And so it's a very similar story, whether you're looking at Greece or in the Caucasus Mountains. So anyway, to me, there's a lot tying and intermeshing this Greek mythology and the Caucasus Mountains. So it would make sense that those who are in power, you look at the startup of the quote unquote more modern USA, everything still has like Greek ties. So it makes sense that, humanity is just viewed as something that can be punished, and it's tied to the Caucasus Mountains. So they use Caucasian to, I think within each of us, we have a deep set memory of some of these quote unquote myths and folklore. How is it that like there's 5 or 6, probably more, main groups within the Caucasus Mountains that have kept their own culture and their own languages, pretty much intact, even though they've been attacked left and right from different empires, and they've, retreated up into the mountains, have their strongholds, and it's harder to control all of them because they each have to maintain their each unique identities. So anyway, but yet the memory of this is strong, such to the extent that Kazakhstan is nearby, and I'll hold up a map in a minute. Actually, I'll do it now. And Kazakhstan has an emblem. This is only half of it from the cover. This is a profile of the Pegasus head and wings, or in this case, Turpal. Okay. So anyway, here, let me hold this up. And I probably should have opened this whole thing up a little differently, but we'll get there. So this is, give me a moment. Okay. So here are the Caucasus Mountains between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. Okay. The Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. The Caucasus run between the two. Okay. And they're pretty much a division between Europe, and then we've got, Russia. Look what's here. Russia, Ukraine. We have Turkey, Armenia, Azerbaijan. We have Iraq, Iran, Syria. Any of these countries ringing bells? Georgia. There's also Chechnya. And what do we know with all these wars happening all around the Caucasus? Okay. There was a huge purge attempted to genocide Armenia in our recent history. There's been always warring, like Chechnya is over in here, and always going after these ancient peoples. So, and we got to ask why, and all the wars all nearby. So this is a very old territory, okay? And such that, here it is in the more of the topographical map. So all of these lines, this comes off a YouTube channel, that's the main, Caucasus mountain range right in here, dividing. And then there's other, areas. There's lowlands of it, or lower mountains to the south and higher, to the north. So this is a very important geographical location. We move in here and we see it. This is just kind of a breakdown of demographics of the different peoples. So again, we have Russia up here, Georgia, Armenia, and these are all different like languages, all the different colors that they've kept intact, and they keep their identity intact. as a cultural identity. And here's Chechnya, but again, why so many wars? That's why I put in my description area, what's going on in the Caucasus Mountains? There's always kind of a battle. It's more than just for a trade route or other things. And it really is the seat of a lot of Indo-European peoples. So these whole language, this bank of languages is called PI, is an acronym for Proto-Indo-European. And so it's a whole different group of languages. I put some more kind of backstory and things about this area in more detail in my post section. So as I said, I'm just kind of dropping and going with some things here that, maybe there's something that piques your interest, or there's a buzzword or something that leads you on your own little springboard to investigate things further. Now, some of the images at the bottom, I just want to show some of some of the people's, some of the costumes and dress. They really do evoke kind of this Tartarian idea, if you know anything about that. And that's just some of the Turpal imagery, or like their version of Pegasus. Okay, the winged horse. And I want to bring up the Tartary thing, because I know a lot of people are just coming into some knowledge about, well, what was Tartaria? There was this other civilization before some kind of resets happened. And some people might think, well, that's just kind of a pie in the sky, pun intended, because I just talked about pie being an acronym for Proto-Indo-European. But as on, I think, my previous live, I was talking about evidence of, yes, there's Tartaria, and I've got evidence in this Sturgis's Illustrated Dictionary of Architecture and Building. This is it's a reprint from 1901, 1902. I got these hard copy books in the 80s, okay? And I'm going to bring it up again. There is the existence of Tartary or Tartaria. So when you see some of these maps, they're very legit. I mean, this is a whole catalog of very detailed architectural details of buildings. And it talks about Tartary architecture of, and it says, see Turkestan, okay? And I'm going to point to it so you can see it. Here we go. If I can, here we go. See, Tartary architecture of see Turkestan, okay? So we'll go see Turkestan in here. I'm going to have a map to show you where Turkestan is. Let's see. Yeah, so here we go. And then we look further and we see Turkestan, architecture of, and it talks about where it is, okay, north of the Kingdom of Persia, et cetera, So we know that it's a real place, and when it occurs on maps, it's referring to a real thing. I'm just saying that because, again, this is a very detailed book of architectural details and written at a certain period of time. And so they're going to put, presumably, authentic things in there. So let me show you where Turkestan is. I got to go to my phone if I can find it. Hang on. It's here somewhere. Oh, yes. Okay. Let's look up Turkestan. Hang on. I have it on my screenshots. And by the way, I'll take now as the time to say thanks for being here. Whether you're new to the channel or coming back, appreciate you one and all. Okay, so here, bear with me, but it'll it'll focus in a minute. So there you go. That orange territory down there, Turkestan. So we see, sorry about that. It's having a hard time to focus. Give me a minute. Usually it kicks in. Hang on. Okay, Europe, Russia. See, it's below Russia, Asia, Europe off there. So it's down there west of China. So it's a big territory. Sorry, that's not the best. Here, let me try it one more time. Okay, yeah, it's better. So see Europe, Russia, Asia, Mongolia, China, and then over there is a vast area called Turkestan. Okay. Now, why is that important? Oh, and Turkestan is not to be confused with Turkmenistan. Okay, I invite you to go look that up. After all of this show, I may, try to post it in the post section with pictures of the maps and all of that. But anyway, the issue is that that's a big area, a big territory, with a lot of history to it tying to Tartaria. Now, Tartaria, what do I want to say? Tartaria will get us into the talk of giants again, because apparently at that time, and there's a little bit of discrepancy of when that time period was of Tartaria before there were different resets. And I'm going to take us to a specific time in place in that area. And this will eventually tie back in and relate. I know it's a little confusing at the moment. I'm just trying to put all these pieces that landed into me today together. Um, but and with the Tartarian architecture, there's a very specific way that architecture was. It seemed to be very monumental. So where there was doorways and portal openings into different very grand and very sophisticated buildings, there's, just a massive, massive opening for the doorways. People say, well, that looks like it's for a giant. And sometimes within those huge doorways, there's even like a mini door for people like our size. And looking around for different things to put the show together, which does somehow now tie the giants and the Tartarians together. I have evidence of in literature talking about 15-foot tall beings and coming from kind of the area of, and now we get into kind of North Africa. There are other things tying to Tartaria too. But anyway, I wanted to just say too that, did you ever think about who the tallest person is on Earth right now? And I looked it up, and the tallest guy, it's a man. He is from the area of Turkey. So even though Turkey is not exactly the Turkestan area, it's just to the west of it. But anyway, his name is apparently Sultan Kuzin, and he is about 8'3". Okay. So I'm just bringing that up to say that even right now in modern times, we have some beings that are up to 8 feet tall. So it's not really a bridge too far to look even further back in history and think, well, maybe a civilization, a sophisticated civilization ahead of ours now, could have had taller beings. And there's plenty of examples in literature and some classical paintings and clues still findable. Not everything has been wiped and erased from history to hide some of our true world mysteries, okay, or more like kind of secret society things. They tend to know a lot because they're holding a lot of keys that are locking up information that's being hidden from most of us. But there's still clues here and there to help us get to the truth. And today, I only tripped upon it as I was looking up the Pegasus and the Turpal, and all of that mythology somehow brought me into thinking about another question. Not only why do whites have to check off the Caucasian box, but another question coming up for the show was, what was the earliest literature where we see the phrase once upon a time? So of course, in fairy tales, or you read little books to children, it's always going to start off with once upon a time, right? In a land far, far away. And what do we know? Even with Star Wars, that was coming to mind too. We've got code and things to decode hidden in plain sight. So the whole story, Star Wars story that we know, it starts off with once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away. And that got me thinking, so where did that phrase first come about? Now, some people might be familiar in the 1600s. There's a series of, fairy tale stories in France, like the origin story to Cinderella. There's some Brothers Grimm fairy tale stories that also start with once upon a time. But I wanted to know, what do we know from what's findable right now, just on our internet searches and whatnot? What's the very first example? And this one I found just on a search says that the oldest place it occurs, maybe there's other examples, but this is a pretty good one, is in a literature piece called Sir, like a S-I-R, Sir, I think it's pronounced Ferumbras. And it's from around 1380, so 14th century literature. There's, I think, a reprint of it done in 1879. But anyway, the story of Sir Ferumbras, it says it's a 14th century Middle English metrical romance. And it talks about, it's part of the Matter of France, or Charlemagne's cycle of stories. It's supposedly here. This is just the summary. I didn't read it. It's like 300 pages in this one reprint. But it recounts the Saracen conquest of Rome, the duel between Ferumbras, the son of Sultan of Babylon, and the Christian knight Oliver, and his subsequent conversion to Christianity. So this Saracen knight, Ferumbras, supposedly invades France and challenges Charlemagne's forces. And he does convert to Christianity, supposedly, and joins the crusade to recover holy relics. Now, why do we care about Ferumbras? Well, I thought that was kind of odd to see the word Saracen. So Saracen reminded me of the Saracen stones. That's the outer circle of stones in Stonehenge that I talked about on my recent giant, themed live. And Saracen, I think, can mean outer or like from another land, like foreign. But in this case, something just said, really look at this, the Saracen Knight. So then I did. I looked it up and I asked specifically, how tall was Sir Ferumbras supposedly? Ferumbras supposedly. And it says that he was described as being a giant, a Saracen giant, standing approximately 15 feet tall, about 4.6 meters. So that's a 15-foot tall person, okay? And it says that he would have come from, they're saying the Saracens is a historical term for Arab Muslim forces. I don't know about that part, but we'll just go with what the internet is saying, who raided Rome at about 846 AD. And that they weren't from, this says they weren't from Babylon, like Iraq, Babylon. It says they originated, that they were a raiding fleet that originated from it looks like Aghlabid dynasty in North Africa and Sicily. And they did not intend to conquer Rome, but rather plunder the immense undefended wealth stored in the religious shrines outside the city's main walls. So they say that these raiders targeted Old St. Peter's and St. Paul outside the walls. And that raid led to the construction of the Leonine Wall around the Vatican. So obviously after they got plundered, there would be supposedly a wall going up to better defend the Vatican holding the treasures. So again, that Saracen term reminded me of the Saracen stones. And that takes us back to my recent live about the giants, because I talked about there being a story, like a medieval account in one of the archaeological museums over in the Salisbury Plain or Wiltshire, somewhere in there. And it talks about Stonehenge being relocated from Killarus, Ireland, I think in Northern Ireland, and brought over to the site in Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire in England by giants from North Africa. And that there also might have been some sorcery or Merlin type things involved, someone who had knowledge of how to levitate the stones. But that particular story included North African giants. So now we have another piece from another piece of literature that talks about 15-foot tall Saracen giants coming from North Africa. In this case, they were pillaging supposedly treasures in Rome. But if there are giants located there, then we just got another little piece of maybe some plausibility of North African giants being involved in the somehow placing the stones at Stonehenge or cooperating to do it. So I thought that was a very interesting connection. And that totally took me off on a whole nother, path away from kind of what I was talking about for the title of the show. And thank you for bearing with me. I know that's a little convoluted here, but I'm just know that I'm supposed to talk about this. And again, there might just be pieces or words or things that kind of trigger memories within you. If you might want to look into any of this on your own deeper or further. And I'll do some extra clarification after the show, because I'll go back and go, what did I talk about? This is not what I wanted to do. And I'll put some clarifications either in the post sections or in the description area below. Okay, so let's hop back to the Caucasus. That was a side detour. And the Caucasus Mountains, okay. And then here's in classical painting a depiction of Prometheus chained to the stone and the eagle coming to torment him each day. And then here's just some imagery I just wanted to show of, the idea of stealing the fire. And then we have some early kind of more primitive view of what a Pegasus figure looks like in the Persian, that would be the Turpal, what's his name? Turpal. And there's also a spelling instead of Turpal, there's Tulpar. So either way, it just depends on which, I guess, not dialect, but which, peoples, have the story. But the story of Pegasus or a winged horse is deep-seated into the memory of these peoples, to the extent that they're putting it on the new modern emblem of Kazakhstan, for example, the winged horse. So it is an important character. Now, what's interesting too, let's see, do look at my post section, because this whole area, I guess I'll come back over here. This whole area, I'm going to zoom in, has these really interesting towers up in the mountains, and their whole history is really fascinating. And I do have some links. Oh, and this is this is a close-up of the ring of the Prometheus statue at the Rockefeller Plaza in New York City. And on the inside, it shows the constellations. On the outside, that ring has the zodiac. And then, like I said, we've got Prometheus, holding the fire. So again, that's like major code right there at that Rockefeller Plaza about, the one that was trying to help humanity is going to get punished and chained to a rock at Rockefeller Plaza. And also nearby, as an aside, if you know the area of New York City, what else is around Rockefeller Plaza? The Atlas. So there's heavy Greek mythology around there. Okay, let's see. Oh, this is too just from when I'm talking about the Northern African giants. This was from my previous show where we had in an ancient manuscript there too showing a giant being. So that's supposed to be the giants from North Africa, which I think is what this Saracen is that I just found. That would have been 15 feet tall. That's what that looks like. Also, I just wanted, since we're talking about Prometheus chained to a rock with a gold, I think it was a gold ring and chain, that also ties into my recent unicorn show, where we have this unicorn is not just single bound with a, usually it's chained with a girdle here, but also, I don't have the picture of it, but also in the crest of the Royal House of Windsor, they have the lion on one side and have the unicorn on the other. And the unicorn is chained in gold, and chained and bound. And in this case, another kind viewer of the channel here to there said, yeah, this is even a double binded or bound unicorn. And I think, again, I mentioned before in the previous show that I think the unicorn represents like us, like humanity being bound. Probably more specific, the innocence, like the children, that God spark that comes in all of us. Anyhow, that's what I'm connecting it to right now. Okay, well, a part of this whole thing too, when we look into these myths or legends or folklores of Pegasus or Turpal, and again, Turpal, or it can also be Tulpar, as a winged horse. What else do we see? Winged horses throughout symbolisms and things like, this is a picture of Oceanus. This is a giant statue at Trevi Fountain in Rome. And at the foot of Oceanus, there are hippocampus, which are a horse with wings, but also like a fish-like tail. So again, we have a winged horse of a different kind. And what's interesting is whether it's a Pegasus that flies in the air, or Tulpar or Turpal that flies in the air, or whether it's a hippocampus, or like a water horse. What's interesting is they're always conveying or carrying these gods around. So if you think about it, this is just kind of going into further thought with Greek mythology. You've got all these like sky beings like Zeus and whatnot, but with exception of like Hermes or Mercury, who has the wings on the shoes or on the helmet, they all kind of have wings when it's depicting somebody who has to fly up and down between the realms. And it's like almost the gods on Mount Olympus, if they're doing a sun chariot or whatever, it's always drawn by horses of some kind. So they don't just like fly on their own, which I find very interesting. There's also, really good evidence and cases to talk about these Greek gods, that their origin story is really their ETs with, kind of not infinite lifespans, but ones that spanned. If you look at like the stories in Enoch, it's saying that some of these characters live for over 30,000 years, so that would mean some of these, after whatever our last reset was, still exist now in different forms. They could shapeshift, they can, change their look. Anyway, just fun food for thought. But anyway, back to Oceanus here. Oceanus is, I have it in my screenshots. I think this Oceanus statue at Trevi Fountain, I think he stands about 19 feet tall. So that's, a really large kind of giant depiction of Oceanus and large size. If you've ever been to Rome, everything is just monumental, colossal sizes. So we know that, like with the story I just read you about Sir Ferumbras and him being a 15-foot tall Saracen who came down from North Africa to conquer Rome and plunder its riches. If that's true, I don't know, but I think the aspect of him being 15 foot tall is true. I don't know if they were the ones plundering or if blame was just attributed to them as being the ones conquering. I don't know, but let's just take the story at face value. It doesn't matter. It's showing you that there's 15-foot beings walking around, and that would make sense for Rome if you've ever been there. And even if not, look at pictures and compare humans standing in some of the scenes. Everything is colossal. It's like built for giants. That's how you feel, walking around. And so like a 15-foot person walking through, that makes sense. And probably they're even taller people, Anyway, just find it fascinating. So this statue at Trevi Fountain is about 19 foot tall. When I was researching stuff, I haven't been to Las Vegas. I have no desire to go, but apparently there's a replica of the Trevi Fountain and the same, I think, 1-to-1 scale. So if you can't get over to Rome and you're US based, you might see something there to compare size. Also, when I looked at that and the size of this statue in Rome, I also was drawn to look at the famous David attributed to Michelangelo. I think now that we're getting into our true history, we know that a lot of these works, whoever they're attributing to, probably were not done by the people they're attributing them to. But anyway, again, we'll just take it at face value for now. And I think that David is also close to 19 feet, if not, somewhere between 16 and 18 or something. It depends if you count the base of him or not. So again, and I've been in the presence of that one and this one actually. And it's very interesting, just to compare yourself and your height with some of these epically huge, colossal statues. And like I said in one of my previous lives, my most intimidating experience, encountering sculptures, massive sculptures, was the indoor sculpture of Athena and Nike within the quote unquote replica 1-to-1 scale of the Parthenon in Nashville, Tennessee. And she's 42 foot tall. The winged victory of Nike, the figure in her hand, is, 6'4". So it gives you an idea of the scale. And that's the one that's in the movie. If you want to see it in the movies, it's in the Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. And, there's a scene happening there with a Hydra, multi-headed Hydra and all of that. So anyway, what started off to be talking about the Pegasus, the winged horse who actually helped the Caucasus Mountains folklore version of Prometheus, just led to all of this, what I'm talking about. Now, back to that mythology, Pegasus never helped Prometheus. But in the Caucasus Mountains, the winged horse did help their hero get the fire, which is just interesting. I don't know why there's that deviation, but I just find it interesting. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, and as always, feel free if you want to jump into chat. If not, no big deal. And as always, I'm open to talking about anything, whether it's the topic or off the topic is fine. Now, let me just look at my notes and see if there's anything else I wanted to touch on. And I think I will, looking at the time, I'll probably follow up with a different part 2 and kind of stay a little more focused on some of the other aspects I wanted to talk about today. But yeah, this kind of took me a little bit in different directions, but I hope it's enough just to get you thinking and about some different things. Mainly, I guess, it became more of a story about giants, but also how humanity is treated throughout Greek mythology and other mythologies and what that might mean relative to today. Let's see. Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'm going to save the rest of what I wanted to talk about for the next time. And I know I started late. So again, unless there's any questions or comments, I think what I'll do is wrap this up a little early today. I'm just feeling it. It's just kind of going to be a shorter day today with this. But I think what I will do is I did go ahead and shuffle a deck. I've featured this before, and I'm going to just show you some oracle cards, a few. If it's not your jam, feel free to head out. But otherwise, for those of you who are interested, I'm just going to go over a few cards from Wild Kuan Yin Oracle by Alana Fairchild. And the ones that came out, there were 3. And I'll just read a little bit from her book. They're very detailed descriptions here, but I'll just do some shorter excerpts. So for those of you into the numbers, the lineup is going to be number 29, number 31, and number 43. So the first card is called, I'll show you them all and then we'll get into it. It's called The Blessing of the Kite Dancer. And I picked this deck because it's very airy, it's very up in the clouds, and it reminded me of the whole gods and Mount Olympus and mythology and being up high in the mountains. And because the mountains are somewhat near this area. But anyway, Blessing of the Kite Dancer, just very prettily done here, very poetic. And she's way up in the air. And then we have this one gets more grounded. Harvest Mother Watches Over Me. That's a very pretty card too. So very golden, warm tones on both of these cards. And then we get into some cooler tones. And this is Sister of Shambhala Shows the Way. And that's pretty interesting too. We've got some bird imagery in there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I drew these early because it gets a little complex to try to do this talk and pull and do everything if I don't go ahead and kind of pre-plan a bit. So I put some bookmarkers. And here, just to give you an idea, if you're interested in oracle cards, this is a black and white guidebook. But let's start off with The Blessing of the Kite Dancer. And I'm just going to read a very short excerpt. And this one says, I see your full potential, and I know that you are willing to develop into all that you can be. I will encourage and guide you. Sometimes I will evoke the best in you through opportunity. Sometimes I will coax forth the best in you through challenge. What you can be assured of is success on this path of self-development. Life has offered you much natural ability and talent. I will help you discover and develop it so that you can offer yourself back to life as a beautiful gift. And I'll just read a tiny bit more. I think, will I? Let's see. Okay, I'll just read a little bit more. You have been gifted with a talent and ability. You may or may not be aware of it as yet, but the divine knows it is important for your success in this lifetime to develop it. So you have received a blessing from Kuan Yin. It is that your talent will be nurtured by the divine into its full expression. This is a great gift. To feel the satisfaction of developing your inner potential and expressing it is profoundly satisfying and nourishing for the soul. So it's just showing that you are being supported at this time for any of your natural talents and to develop them further. And if you're not sure what they are, I think a good thing to do is to think back to when you were about 7, and then again about 13 or 14, in and around there. Those seem to be some key times when you look back at your life, or you look at other children and you see that they kind of get lit up by something. And maybe it's something they wanted to pursue, but then somebody criticized or laughed at them or just didn't encourage it. And so it just kind of fell away by the wayside. Or you get to be the age where somebody says, well, it's nice you want to do art, but you'll never make money with that. Or, oh, you want to sing, but how are you going to have a living? And things that just suddenly put a huge wet blanket on any of these gifts that could have otherwise been fostered and encouraged in the right setting. And some people can have a drive and a mission and move through all that negativity or, kind of adverse criticism or lack of support and do it anyway. And others follow a different path because they felt stymied from that one. But then, maybe a different part of your life, you circle back and start looking into that more. So that's just an interesting thing. And it's just showing that loving energies. The Kuan Yin is kind of, I guess, akin to, it's an ascended master, akin to kind of like a Mother Mary, very loving, nurturing. Think of the most loving person in the world. Could be male or female in your life. And just whether they're with us or have transitioned on, just think of that loving, force and that it's still around you, encouraging you. And if you have nobody like that in your life, I'm here to say, you are encouraged and that I wish the best for everybody. And I send out my strongest vibes for encouragement and strength and wherewithal and whatever you need to go and pursue whatever really lights you up. Because if you're lit up, you share that with the world, and it just brings exponential goodness to everything. So keep going. And if you don't know in which direction to go, just really kind of close your eyes and, look back to what might have been good. And if you still don't know, then ask your divine team, just say, hey, I don't know. Can you kindly show me? My whole team, can be God, Jesus, Mary, Buddha, Allah, as we say, like whatever loving force, your guardian angelics, as I always say, your galactic ET family. You got friends and family there too. And they can get messages to you, just like you see a message via a feather or, very auspicious feather or coin on your path, and you just know it's connected to a more loving force in the unseen realms. Just know they're there too to help you along as well. And feel free to ask and just talk like you're talking to yourself as you move around and just say, hey, guys, can you kindly show me? I can't see it. I need help to see it. And then eventually you will get that help, at the right time, the right timing, and the right unfoldment of it all. Okay, now let's look at the 31. Is a harvest mother watches over me. And I'll just read a little bit from here too. Let's see which part we want to read. Okay, I'll read this other part. It's called guidance. There are times in the path when we feel the urge to go within, to withdraw from the world for a time, to claim some space. It may feel as though you need to empty out. Create some space within yourself to reconnect with your true thoughts and feelings. This is not a time to keep taking in more information or to push yourself to have more experiences, meet new people, or take new risks. That will all happen again soon enough. For now, you already have enough to process within, and you need time to do that. Take some time out for you with an exclamation point. Let's see. There is something very nourishing, healthy, and life affirming within you, waiting to be tapped into. But you need to make a choice to do that and give yourself some time and space. Now is a good time to do that. But you will need to step back from the day-to-day world for a moment at least to enjoy this me time and go within. So I think I'll stop right there. But, they keep reiterating it's you time. And who better to take time for you than you? And we do need to make time. If you even have to put it up on a calendar, do it. Like I've, said to people in the past, especially if you've been in like the 9-to-5 grind or have a high pressure job and you feel like you can't even step away for a moment, and say your car breaks down. People, what do? They'll make sure, if that's your only way to get to your job or whatever, they make sure they get that done. But how many times are there things kind of going wrong with us, but we're like, oh, I'll do it later. Well, we need to, maybe it's a good idea to look at it with the same kind of urgency of, well, I would fix my vehicle. Why am I not fixing this vehicle or nourishing it or, making it nice? Like you would, if you spend time, if you're one of those who really wash and wax the car and detail it, well, we deserve that as well, right? So taking time to do that. And if you're already doing that, great. And now let's just look at one more of these. This was the Sister of Shambhala Shows the Way. And let me just see. Okay, I'll just read a little bit here. So Shambhala is a sacred spiritual place where many highly advanced spiritual beings are said to reside and service to the spiritual evolution of humanity. The only difference between these beings and the rest of humanity is the degree to which their will is in alignment with the divine. This oracle brings you a nudge on your path from the holy ones, a loving but definite push in a particular direction to fulfill your divine destiny. You'll feel the guidance for what steps you need to take and when from within your own heart. If you ever waver into impatience or confusion, come out of your head and listen closely to your heart. You'll know what you need to know and when you need to know it. Trust in the beings that love you unconditionally and trust in yourself. And that is actually a really good message. There's, something to be said for where are you living? Meaning at any given moment, where are you? Where are you present? Are you in the head and things are running around and you're looking at a to-do list or, oh my gosh, if this doesn't happen, what's going to happen? Then that's all in here. That's all in the head. And there's something to be said just to drop down into the heart. And you don't have to go into a lotus position, meditating, deeply connecting that way. You can just right now, when I ask the question, are you acting from your head or from your heart? And that means like, are you listening to all this chatter and like the rules and laws of men? Or are you like in here, which just kind of laughs at that and says, oh, isn't that cute? There's so much. This is connected into the whole divine realm and knows like the bigger picture. and knows that, any of the like petty worries are occupied up in here. And, when we just drop down and say, okay, what do I know to be true? That feeling comes from here, the overall heart center, heart space. That's not coming from here, because up in here is the realm that can be tricked, confused, easily, because it's relying on things that we see with our eyes, and that can be a false world out there. But what do we know with the third eye, or we go within and connect in there? That can't be tricked if we truly listen to it. I think there's some situations we get into, find ourselves in, that we know there were red flags. We may have even had supernatural occurrences happen to like try to prevent us from going a certain way, but we're still kind of in the 3D world. We go that way anyway. And then we're not surprised when something goes awry, because we're like, oh, but something was nagging me, nudging me not to go that way, but I did anyway, right? That kind of thing happens. So anyway, living from here is what's true, is the feeling, like they say, it's a feeling universe. What we feel is true in here. That's the reality. That's what's real and true, is that love energy of the heart chakra, and not in the mind that can go, and I'm not talking about the crown chakra, which is also connected in with the divine. But anyway, it's a very simple question. Where are you living? Like the big question, a lot of spiritual circles is, are you living out of fear or out of love? Well, the other question is, are you in your head or in your heart, right? And not like wearing my heart on my sleeve type of thing, but in my heart, connected in. If I really listen, then I know, and I'm in alignment with, my divine team, then that's what you know to be true. Okay. And it's also kind of like your gut level feeling that's kind of tied in there as well. Let's see. Okay. I was going to talk about a couple more things, but I think I'm going to leave that for another time. I will say one more thing. Will I? Let's see. Yeah, no, I'll save it for another time. It's not time to go there. Crystals of the day, I didn't show any. I will just throw them out. I'm not going to explain them too much, but because the nature of the show was going to go into the whole fire because of the stealing of the fire by Prometheus and the water of the horses. Actually, also, I wanted to say Pegasus is very closely related to spring water. And then we have the hippocampus, which are the sea water with the whole Poseidon and Neptune kind of imagery. So with the whole show, we're kind of into the four elements. Or five. So I've got chrysocolla. This is rough, or very rough. Look that up, the Greek etymology of chrysocolla. It's very interesting. That's known to be connected with the heart. Good things there too. It's kind of a turquoise in color. There's a lot of different varieties with different looks to them, and whether they have little matrix in there or not, which is like kind of like a dirt and grit. I don't really have that on these, but it's a beautiful color. So that we'll use to symbolize the water. And then earth, I'll go back with one of my favorites. I've shown it before, but my prey night, it's green like grass. I love it. Looks like it has blades of grass in there. And then, so that'll be earth. And then fire, we'll do, this is, what is this? Give me a minute. This is not orange calcite. What is this? Oh, carnelian. I think this is a form of carnelian. I don't think this is my orange calcite one. But anyway, it's more orange, and it has kind of some rusty, veins in it, kind of to be like the earth. And then I have air, which can be this little chunk of here, soul, And then ether, I'll use selenite or celestine, very heavenly. And I've shown that before. This is one of my really good kind of physical healers. So, and I'll throw in calcite again. I know I show this a lot, but ocean calcite or Caribbean calcite, it's kind of like got the swirls and the power and the energy of the ocean in there and the sea foam. So those are just some of those crystals. And I think that's about it. So I want to thank you for joining in. Yeah, it's 11 p.m. What a great time to wind this up. And again, a little bit of apologies, or just not apologies, but pardon, the beginning was a little bit scattered, but just weird energies were coming in with the show. Not weird isn't bad, but just there's a lot that wanted to come through. And I will better organize this for next week. We'll do a part 2, and then I think it'll be calmer. But the real truth drop I had to bring in was the revelation of the Saracen giant peoples in literature, showing them in the 1380 literature, neon arrow pointing to a 15-foot tall being in this, being as a part of that as reality. And then, tying that into some of the other things I talked about. So giants are real, I'll just say, just like we say fairies are real. All these other beings aren't quite myths anymore. We're finding a lot of good evidence, and not all of it could be taken away. And a lot of us, speaking of living in the heart, are you in the heart and the head? A lot of these truths we're going to get to just by asking some simple questions. So the etymology of history or story in ancient Greek anyway is inquiry. Inquiry. So asking a question. So different stories are told, but also stories will begin if we start asking some questions. And in this case, the show for this, for me, was asking the question, hey, why are white people in America asked to check off a box saying they're Caucasian? What the heck? What's going on in the Caucasus Mountains, and why is there a connection there? And I will say this, I keep saying, one more thing. But the reason why, too, the official version, if you just straight up internet search it and say, why, what's the connection with white people checking off a Caucasian box, it will say, let me just pull this up so I can just read it direct. It will say that it's because a Johann Friedrich Blumenbach in 1752 to 1840, they say he was a German physician and anthropologist who established the fivefold racial classification system, coining the term Caucasian. And I meant to say this at the very beginning, so pardon me. But he proposed, then this is just a quote off of the internet, so take it or leave it, But he says he proposed that the people of the Caucasus, such as the Georgians, the Caucasus Mountains, were the most beautiful, making them the archetype for the white race, which is included in which is included in the English and the other Europeans. They say his Blumenbach's famous work on the natural variety of mankind, originally published in Latin in 1775 and translated into English, proposed that humanity is a single species. His racial categories were Caucasian, meaning white, Mongolian, meaning yellow, Malayan, meaning brown, Ethiopian, meaning black, and American, meaning red. In English-speaking countries, his work was initially embraced by some abolitionists as proof of the unity of mankind. However, his categorization, specifically the naming of Caucasian race and the elevation of European physical features, was later misused by others to justify scientific racism and other things, and they're calling it misinterpretation. So again, according to Blumenbach, which his name actually translated into English means flowers at a creek, like flowers and creek together. But anyway, so he's looking at white as being like the most quote unquote beautiful. However, I think that that's just kind of a little weird side story. I don't think that's the real reason or the real truth behind the Caucasian. I think Caucasian is known to be an area of some original peoples and whose history goes way, way back. I think in general, overall history is much newer than we think, but in those cultures, it goes much further back in other ways than we think. So I think that attributing anything to the Caucasus is just, there's a lot of not only mythology going on there, but when you look too biblically in the Caucasus Mountains, there's also very nearby, or as a part of the chain, I can't remember if it's in the south or where it is, it's nearby, you have Mount Ararat. And what do we know about Ararat? That's supposedly where Noah's Ark landed or was somewhere near there. So there's all these stories go really ancient back. So I think that is a different kind of cradle of civilization, if you will. I think it's a very important region, enough that empires keep trying to take it down. They keep trying to do genocide to wipe out the peoples who carry ancient knowledge and are still doing it. So anyway, I think I better just wind it up right now. But we'll continue this. I'll maybe even repackage this in a better kind of framework in order for next week. But again, thanks for tuning in. And for now, it is Saturday where I'm at, maybe Sunday where you are. Tremendous peace and love to all of you, regardless. And until next time, take care, everybody. Bye.